What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I figured that I would continue this series of me editing photos, and that this time around I would edit a self-portrait, something with a face as opposed to an inanimate object like shoes or my backside or something. So yeah, let's just get started. First things first, as with the last two photos, I'm going to bring up the exposure because once again I have this really bad habit of underexposing my photos. So I'm just going to bring that up a little bit until that looks fine. And for now, 0.3 looks fine on the exposure. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the temperature because this photo is too cool for the look I'm going for. I need it to be warmer. I personally feel that warmer skin tones and a warmer photo in general looks better for portraits. So I'm just going to bring up the temperature of this picture until it looks good to me. Bit by bit, just one click at a time. And about 7800 looks good for now. I'm also going to bring up the tint because once again it's a little to the green side and I would rather have it more to the magenta side because once again I personally feel that magenta looks better for skin tones. So just +5 on that, so bringing it up to +9, that looks pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the contrast. You guys know my rule, I don't like to go past 45, but I have been feeling contrast lately. I've been going pretty heavy on the contrast, so for the third time in a row, I'm going to bring this up to about 45 probably. And yeah, that doesn't look half bad. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the shadows just to brighten up the photo a little bit more and expose some of these shadowy areas here in the background as well as some more of my hair so you can see the curls a little bit more. So I'm bringing those shadows up until it looks fine to me. And about 30 looks pretty good for now. And the very next thing I want to do is I want to bring down the vibrance a little bit to balance out the contrast. When you're adding contrast to a portrait, or any picture for that matter, it's going to add vibrance to the colors, and I don't want the colors super vibrant in this picture, so I'm just going to bring that down. Adjust it to your taste. And I'm also keeping in mind, knowing that I'm going to be adding more contrast later, as well as playing with the colors most likely. I can always go back and change this later if I feel the need to, but for now, -20 looks fine. And also, my skin tone, I don't know if you can tell through the video, but I look a little more yellow than orange. Not that my skin is orange, but it has more of an orange color to it than yellow, so I'm just going to bring down the hue of the orange slider just a little bit. So -5 to -10 helps it out. I think I'm going to stick to -5 for the time being. Maybe I'll go back and adjust it a little bit more later on. The next thing I want to do is I want these greens back here in this tree back here. I want that to be more of a yellowish color because it was sunset when this photo was being taken, and the tree back here looked a lot more yellowish than green at the time. So I'm going to slide the slider pretty drastically all the way to -100, and that looks pretty good. That's about what I want. So the very next thing I'm going to do is my jacket. I'm going to fix the jacket because the color doesn't look quite right, and it's also not the right brightness. It just looks a little funky to me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring down the luminance so that it's not so bright and it's not standing out so bad. So I'll just bring that down until it looks good to me. And yeah, at about -20 looks fine. Next thing I want to do is I want to bring down the saturation. Once again, I will be adding more contrast. And I know from experience, especially since I wear this jacket a lot, that in pictures, the more I edit, it tends to stand out more and it tends to get really bright and saturated. So I'm going to bring down the saturation for now, probably quite a bit. It's a very faded and old beat up jacket anyway, so it doesn't have a lot of color or life to it. So I'm just bringing that down. And about -40, that looks fine for now. I'm also going to bring down the hue because it has, I wouldn't say it's green, but it has the ever so slightest bit of a greenish tint to it, so I'm just going to bring the hue down to about -10, and that looks pretty good right there. So the next thing I think I'm going to do is jump into the tone curve, my favorite part of editing any picture. And if you've seen the other two videos, you guys know how this goes. I'm just going to select medium contrast. I'm going to delete the second point from the left, and then I'm going to take the bottom point. I'm just going to drag that up until it looks good to me to get that sort of like faded, sort of washed out effect that'll help mute some of the picture and also add a certain effect to the shadows and the blacks in pictures that I tend to really like. And it's an effect that a lot of other people seem to really like as well. So I'll just bring that up until it looks good to me. Okay, so somewhere around 12 to 13% looks good. I'll leave it at somewhere around 13%. So 12.9% looks pretty good to me. Next thing I want to do is, I think I'm actually going to bring up the shadows just a little bit more. So I'm going to jump back into the basic panel, bring the shadows up to about plus 40. That looks fine. And I'm also going to bring up the exposure because, as I said in the first video, the more I edit, sometimes my photos just keep looking darker and darker to me, probably because I add so much contrast and things like that. So I'm just going to bring it up a little bit more. So let's just bring it up to about, yeah, 0.5 looks good to me. Next thing I want to do, I think I'm going to add a little bit of clarity to this, not much, just the slightest touch, so maybe plus 5 or 10. Yeah, plus 10 doesn't look bad at all. Let's see, I think the next thing I want to do is add a vignette to this because the edges of the photo are really bright and I want to kind of close in the picture. I think a vignette looks especially good on portraits as long as it's not overdone. But since this picture is muted because it's lacking in vibrance and the contrast was balanced out by the tone curve and the vibrance, I think I can get away with adding a slightly heavier vignette than I usually would. So I think I can go around maybe 15 to 20, maybe 25. No, I think 25 is too much, but 20 doesn't look bad, so I think I'll stick with that. The next thing I want to do is, if you can see here, I kind of have like stubble on my neck. Once it clears up, it's also a little bit noisy because, as you can see, this was shot at 400 ISO, but that doesn't bother me too much. But I think what I'm going to do in order to kind of like soften the skin on my neck is actually go over to the adjustment brush and select the soften skin preset that's built into Lightroom. And I'm just going to brush over my neck, and that's just going to brighten it up just a little bit, soften, smooth it out, and that looks pretty good. I think the next thing I'm going to do is probably, honestly, I'm just going to hit the Y key to see it before and after real quick. It's not looking so bad so far. I'd say I'm just about done. I might want to take my adjustment brush, create a new brush, and I'm just going to bump down the exposure to minus 0.10, just a little bit, just to darken my face a little bit. I feel like my forehead is a little bit too bright and my nose is a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to brush over those areas. Let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And if you see down here, I'm just flipping this switch. It turns the brush effects that you added on and off. If it's down, it's off. If it's up, it's on. So it's kind of like getting a before and after, and I like the way that turned out. Yeah, I think I'm almost about done here. I think as a final touch, I might add a radio filter, something I don't always do. But I think I'm going to add an extra ray of light up here across the top of the picture. So I'm just going to click and drag so I can create a filter. And I think what I'm going to do is slightly angle this a bit. I don't know if you can tell, but there is a light ray shining diagonally through here, but it's kind of weak, so I think I'm just going to enhance it. And whoops, I accidentally created another filter. So I'm just going to go back to this one. What I want to do is angle it more diagonally. And I'm just going to make it more dramatic. So what I'm actually going to do here is bring the warmth of it all the way to 100. Something I would not usually do, but I think it's probably going to work out. Next thing I want to do is bring up the exposure quite a bit to make it brighter and stand out. So I don't know how far I'm going to go with this, but I'm probably going to go pretty far. Yeah, 2 looks fine. And I'm also going to bring up the contrast all the way and the clarity all the way to 100. Once again, these are not settings I would usually use, but I think just for this particular instance it'll look fine. I'm just going to flip the switch to see the difference. So there's before and there's after the filter. And I think I might take the adjustment brush once more and reset it. And I think I'm going to bring up the shadows to maybe about 50. I just want to brighten up this tree here in the background to my left, but it's the right side. I'm just going to brush over that. I think 50 is a little bit too much. I'm going to bring it down to maybe about 40 to 35. Yeah, 35 looks fine. And that'll just about do it. I think I might go back to the vignette and add a little bit more. I think 25 does look fine now that I look at it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't edit every portrait the same, but I really like the way this one just turned out. As you can see, I have a few other photos down here, so I am going to click on this one here, hold down Shift, click the last one at the other end of the set, click on Synchronize. I personally don't like to use, I don't like to synchronize any local adjustments, so that's any brushes or filters, any cropping, and any spot removal, because that's not necessarily going to be the same on all the photos. But all the other settings, all the other adjustments that I make, I keep those boxes checked so that the other photos get the same treatment. I'm just going to synchronize that. And aside from the brushes, this radio filter I added up here, these other photos should have gotten relatively the exact same edit. So here's one of the other ones. That one looks pretty good. I'd have to go back and tweak it, I'm sure. This one looks pretty good as well. Really like this one. That one's not bad at all. And this one's darker than the other ones, so just real quick, I'm just going to boost up the exposure of this one just to make it match the others. And somewhere right around there looks fine. I think I might even bump up the temperature on this one a bit, so hold on. And I also have this habit of resetting a setting every time I want to change it and then bring it back up. I don't know why I do that, it's just a quirk. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I might go back and add just a little bit more temperature into this one as well, make it even warmer. So I was at 7800. I think I might go somewhere around 8700. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. And that's the end of that. So let me know if you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave a comment down below. Like I said, I'll probably be doing videos like this maybe a few times a week, just uploading videos of a picture that I've taken either that day or the day before, somewhat recently to when the recording's being done, and just talking as I edit the photo. So that's pretty much it, and I'll catch you guys next time. Later.